We had 50,000 affiliates. It was no cost to become an affiliate. My top person made anywhere between $25 to $30 million in commissions. We paid out over $300 million in commissions over that 2.5-year span. I consider this being something that people can make significant amounts of money in.
Josh Zieglowsky, co-founder of ERC Specialists, the company dedicated to helping businesses navigate the complexities of employee retention credit. He's also the co-owner of Commercial Academy and an admitted serial entrepreneur who can't stay still when it comes to opportunities and how to capitalize on them. How important is networking, and how important has networking been to you and your own success?
Honestly, that's how we succeeded with our ERC company. We were the largest in the country in that niche. Rather than trying to figure out how to do things, figure out who you can do it with or who can do it for you.
Your success has not been a straight line.
I've never been taught finance. That's the downside of school these days. They don't teach what you're going to actually do in the real world. We sat down with an attorney and says, this is probably your best bet. Man, I'm not even showing up for my wife. And it was like a crazy way to start your marriage after about 3 or 4 years is file bankruptcy. It sucked. She stuck by me, we stuck with each other, and we just kept on building and building and building. And man, I'm so glad that she has faith in me, that she believes in me. And
welcome to another episode of the Real Mentors Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sean Martin. REAL stands for Real Examples Altering Lives. I am blessed to be shooting on location today with a good friend and guest. So in this episode, we're going to explore the innovative work of Josh Zieglowsky, co-founder of ERC Specialists, the company dedicated to helping businesses navigate the complexities of employee retention credit. Josh is also a friend, and his expertise in financial services doesn't stop there. He's also the co-owner of Commercial Academy and an admitted serial entrepreneur who can't stay still when it comes to opportunities and how to capitalize on them. Josh, such an honor to have you here, my brother. Welcome to the show.
Yes.
Thanks for making the time. I know you are in high demand, so we'll make it, as impactful as we can. Tell our audience, where'd you grow up? A little bit about your backstory, and
Perfect. Grew up in a little town called Morgan, Utah. It's funny because we live there now, but I grew up there. My wife and I, we've been married since 2001. So what is that? 24 years? Coming up on 24 years.
Better not forget August. That, my man.
Yes. I remember 2001 because it was 9/11 and our honeymoon was 9/12. So when all the flights were grounded, we had to kind of move our honeymoon to October. But and we have 4 kids, but we moved to Davis County, Layton, Utah for 20 plus years. And then moved back to a little town, Morgan, Mountain Green, where Snow Basin Ski Resort is about 5 minutes from us, about 2 years ago. So lived there. My kids, I have 2 boys, 2 girls. My boys, Gunnar and Garen, 18 and 15. My girls are 13 and 10. Tons of fun. Beautiful wife. She is my rock. She's the reason why I wake up every day.
Yeah, we've talked about it too. Taryn and Jen are so similar in terms of, they have these dynamic men who want to go out and they just can't stay still, right? We've always got to be doing something. And then we have these amazing wives that support us, don't bust our chops, and they're kind of the complete opposites of us, right?
For sure.
They're just
I think that's
great moms.
I think that's what I need.
Yeah. And, it took me a little while to realize that. And I am blessed enough to be around people like yourself and people in the Zenith group and people in other masterminds like Commercial. And, they always say, if you want to go somewhere, try to model yourself after the people that they're living a life similar to the one that you want to be living. Sure. And, for someone like myself coming from humble beginnings, it's been an ordeal to find that. And I have to seek out the rooms. We're shooting in Vegas right now as your Commercial Academy event is going on. So thank you again for making the time.
Yep.
Who are some of your early influences? Obviously in family, because that's so important to both of us, but also in business and in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Great question. When I first started just, after graduating high school, and going through college, trying to find, it's kind of like when people say, what's your major? And you're like, oh, it's this, but I don't know if I really want to be that.
Right.
I was trying to find something that I liked. I then worked for Sears in commission sales. So I was like, okay, I'm getting paid with what I'm worth. In other words, if I work harder, I get paid more. I don't work as hard, I don't get paid as much.
Keep what you kill.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Eat what you kill. Right? And so then I learned about mortgages, got into mortgages. And I remember meeting like people in real estate and stuff, realtors mostly. I was like, man, maybe I want to do that. That looks pretty cool. And you had to have a license for it. I never really did that. Someone invited me to a conference with a guy named Jeff Rappaport. And what's funny is Jeff is in the Commercial Academy now. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
So when I was 23, so 22 years ago, I went to a class and I split it with 2 other people, and he was my mentor. And 22 years later, now he's a member of our Commercial Academy. You know, it's kind of funny how the tides have turned, you know?
Yeah,
and, so that was the first time when I was like, man, this is a new experience of learning how to do real estate, how to, just learn a whole different way of doing things. And the money was great. It did take me a while, probably about 9 months until I made my first check. I always tell people, it's like, sometimes when you start your own business as a startup, it's like you're on a rocket ship waiting to be launched. And that's how it felt for 9 or 10 months. And then all of a sudden just started happening, and the domino fell. Right. You know, the dominoes fell. And then just deal after deal after deal. And then the mortgage meltdown happened. That was a tough thing. And then shortly thereafter, I found a guy out of Orlando that was doing commercial real estate. He was doing like mobile home parks, hotels, or boutique hotels, and small apartments. And about 1.5 years, 2 years into that mentorship is when I found Scott Schill. And that really turned my thinking, because I was then around people that have been, you know, a member, going to these masterminds each and every year, investing. I always say you're investing, you're not paying for it, right? But investing every year for 10 plus years. And I'd never seen that before. It was just like, you know, this class is going to cost $5,000. Okay, I'll do that. Right. But this was, you know, $30,000 a year. And I had a hard time understanding how people do that. Right. Now it's part of my budget. Second nature. Yeah, it's a part of my budget.
You know, you're the best investment that you can ever make.
Right.
And if I wouldn't have spent tons of money in the last couple of years, we would not be having this conversation. Right. I would not have you as a truly somebody that we're becoming friends. But, you know, more important, when we talk about things, it's really about business.
For sure.
It's really about business. And I think that's what a lot of people fail to see. Tony Robbins, who, you know, we've all taken pieces from, he always says nothing removes the chip from one shoulder like the feeling of success.
Right.
And once you've found some level of success, you don't feel the need to always be angling about business or anything like that. Like, I've gotten to know you as a person first, and then all the other great things you've done in business. How important is networking, and how important has networking been to you and your own success?
Good question. The reason why I think that's a great question is, like, I just finished my first book called Taking Your Shot. My second book, I already named it Building Relationship Capital. I think that's the biggest thing, is I want people to have a relationship with me first, and to them as well. I want to build a relationship before we, like you said, before we talk business.
Right.
That business ends up being just a second nature, an easy way to talk about stuff. But I want relationships, you know, and that to me is what I kind of discovered was my superpower as well. Like, just kind of not just, you know, starting a relationship is like building it, cultivating it, you know, adding value on something that someone might not think they need that value. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've really cultivated over the last few years.
Well, you're a wealth of information, and you give it away freely. And I think it's a little known skill. It took me a while to understand why I've been successful. So we're members of this amazing Zenith Business Group with Dean Graciosi and Tony Robbins. And, you know, getting in that room, my first instinct was always, and you've heard me say it, it's like, I'm going to be the dumbest, brokest guy in the room. And I was flattered to know I wasn't either one. But, you know, as a kid who comes from humble beginnings, it's like, you got to pinch yourself sometimes. And you've come a long way. You don't come from money by any stretch. Sure. So how important is gratitude to you on this journey? Like, are there ever days when you pinch yourself, or you find yourself saying, I can't believe I'm here? Because come a very long way yourself.
I say it all the time. We just got back from Kentucky Derby. I mean, until 6 months ago, that wasn't even on my radar, and we, like you said, the group that we're part of, I mean, we had 5-star service, 5-star like opportunity. And I'm not saying like if I was, if I went to just the Kentucky Derby with a regular admission ticket, I wouldn't have enough, I wouldn't have fun, but it was 5-star. John, who kind of in charge of all that made just a great lasting experience for us.
Yeah.
And all the time, and it's back to relationships. There's this guy that is in Utah. His name's Josh as well. Put me and my wife's name in the hat of being invited to go tour Italy in a Ferrari in June.
Yes.
Stuff like that. Like, I just pinch myself. I'm like, man, I just can't believe I'm getting these opportunities, and I'm very grateful.
Not to blow smoke up your ass either, but you're probably one of the most humble, successful people I've ever met. You're not showy. We teased you and you teased yourself even. You showed up to the Derby in a cheap suit and you broke the pants before you even made it. He's like, I bought these cheap pants. I went to put my phone in.
You weren't supposed to say that.
There went the pants. But you know what? That's who you are.
Yeah.
So much to the point of when you meet somebody, it's about getting to know the person before the business acumen or before, what you have, how much you own, what do you do? I think there's a general interest in getting to know the person because if you get to know the person and you like the person, you're more inclined to do business. So bringing it back to me, I didn't realize what that superpower of networking was and what my unique ability was. So going into the Zenith Room, you were successful with ERC. You could say that. You're successful. I have a successful medical supply business that allows me to afford being in the room, but I still didn't feel like I had a unique ability until a couple of events in where I realized, the light bulb went off. My unique ability is networking.
Yeah.
It's getting to know people from all walks of life. It's being able to have a conversation with Scott Shield, who I know very loosely, within 30 seconds and connect with him.
Yeah.
And that's my talent. And I think so many people out there are just trying to find their talent or find their lane to get that chip off their shoulder and find success. What's some of the advice you might give someone starting out? You've got young kids, son in particular, who we talked about, you want them to go into sales and start experiencing that failure. What other lessons would you say were paramount to a young person or a person at the beginning stages of trying to find their own success?
Well, too, what you're saying too is, everyone is a regular person, and I mean, I think if you kind of like pull back some layers on that, we're all regular people. Just have a regular conversation. The other person might be just as embarrassed or not embarrassed, but shy to have a conversation. And so I remember telling myself, like, what, I'm just going to go push myself just to, go in this group. I don't know anybody, might be 5 to 6 people in that group. And I'm just going to start talking,
Right.
and it ends up being like an easy thing over time. I still go into different groups. It happened yesterday, actually, that I didn't know anybody. I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of embarrassed. I'm kind of shy right now. I get it too. And then I'm like, I'm just going to go talk to people, and then end up talking to this one person for like probably an hour and a half yesterday.
Wow.
And that's what I'm trying to teach my own kids is like my oldest, Gunnar, he's 18. He graduates high school next week. Sometimes he'll say, I don't know why I'm here because I'm not adding value to these people. I'm like, they don't think that. You might think that because, but just so you know, they want to help you out as much as possible. So just go talk, ask questions, and it's kind of like back to my first mentor, Jeff Rappaport. He always said, like, no question's a dumb question. And I've always had that attitude, even when people ask me questions that I'm, is there times that you think like, oh, that's kind of an easy answer, but it's new to them. Like when I first started in real estate, I remember I wrote down in my notes because I was a sponge to like learn as much as I can. And I always remember 2 different questions. One, I didn't know what equity was. I even owned my own house and I didn't know what equity was. I thought it was like you fix up a house and you put $20,000 into it, you get $20,000 in equity. I didn't know it was like your mortgage, versus what it's worth is your equity, right? That was a question that was going through my head all day. that I finally, when I asked the question, it was like a 30-second answer. And like, oh, for the last 6 hours, it's been going through my head. The other one was, what's a FSBO? In my notes, me and Jeff joke about this today. In my notes, I wrote it down FISBO, which it stands for for sale by owner. But because he says, hey, do you want to do the, you know, if you get this FSBO, you do this FSBO, you do this FSBO. So in my notes, I had FISBO because that's the way it was said. But it was like, hey, what's a FSBO? He's like, oh, you don't know what that is? No, you've been talking about it all day. He goes, oh, I'm so sorry. It means for sale by owner. That's a 10-second answer, you know? So I was thinking it was a dumb question.
Right.
You know, and so I always tell my kids.
The answer came, but it came through happenstance, not through you just having the courage to say, let me ask this seemingly dumb question.
And so we should always ask questions.
And there's always someone else in the room who wants to ask the same question, I find.
I guarantee I wasn't the only one.
Yeah,
you know?
Guaranteed, because I had no idea. So I just learned what a FSBO was, and I know to keep the eye out of it.
Yep.
So, you know, that speaks to a thing that you preach all the time. Who, not how.
Yeah.
Not knowing the details, that's a how. I've been able to become successful in my own real estate investments, not through my knowledge and my expertise, but by placing myself to the people, well, next to the people who have that expertise. How important is the who, not how? Or better yet, let's circle back to explain it in your words and what that means, because that's been paramount to your own success. Yeah,
I mean, honestly, that's how we succeeded with our ERC company, ERC Specialists. You know, we were the largest in the country in that niche. And it was promoted from the top, meaning like me and my partners, we promoted it. On the who, not how, it definitely came from me because I read it and I was like, hey, rather than trying to figure out how to do things, figure out who you can do it with or who can do it for you, right? And we just had the right people in place. Like literally, I look at all my partners in ERC, which was about 6 or 7 partners. We all had a different ability, right? And it's funny because when you have the success that we had in ERC, there could be some egos. There's never been egos. There's never been just the best partnership I ever experienced, you know, and just everything was aligned. We all knew each other's lane because we all, you know, rather than trying to figure out, you know, how to do it, we had the who's. We had all of us just knew, you do this, I do that, you know?
Right.
And it's been great. It's been a fun
And we're talking, you know, without sharing too much information, you can Google search it, but I mean, hugely successful company. So that opens up the lane for so many more opportunities, right? You find your stride in one avenue and then the doors are off. You know, the limiting beliefs are gone. You've got the resources to put, you know, your investments in other places, open up the doors for other things. You end up meeting Scott Shield as a student. Yeah. And then how does that partnership come about with Commercial Academy?
Yeah. Like you said, I was just a student, a mentee, you know, he was always been my mentor and he helped me not just with commercial real estate, just with business aspect, you know, to look at things a little bit differently. Very motivating, all that kind of stuff. But I think it was in, so where we at 2025. So the end of 2023, he visited Utah. He wanted to come see our headquarters and stuff with the ERC Specialists. And then we kind of hung out for a day or two. And it's funny because I was driving him back to the airport and literally like 10 to 15 minutes before dropping him off, he then starts going on this like, kind of this like speech a little bit. Well, the speech was like, he was trying to drop the hammer on being a partner and having me be a partner with him. And I told him, I said, man, I'm beyond grateful that you would think of me that way. I said, and I'm way honored, you know, and, but I got to ask, like, why me, you know? And he goes, well, I know commercial real estate, you know, and I just want a partner that understands like the business. You've always been a big promoter of Commercial Academy because even before I was a partner, I mean, I was referring friends in Utah, just anyone across the country because I believe this is one of the best, you know, masterminds of commercial real estate in the country. I really believe that.
I agree.
You know, and so I promoted it, you know, from the time I got to know him, you know, in 2017, 2018, you know, and so that was his biggest thing is invite me into, you know, the family of Commercial Academy. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, and Scott is the real deal. I can't wait to have him on. Such an amazing story, such an amazing heart, and just so genuine. One of the guys we brought in yesterday was like Scott's the real deal. Like he's heard Scott speak for 2 hours and we came through to hear Scott speak and he was magic. Scott's always magic because he's literally, as he said, he's living the life of his dreams and it's by intention. So it's inevitable that rubs off on you. And the Commercial Academy family is a group of raving fans. As another mentor of ours, Dean, loves to say, you've got to create a fan base within your own communities. And Commercial Academy is one of those places where there's just so much love. Everybody wants to see you succeed in the room. So, you know, that's just getting started. I didn't know it was only 2 years in the making. And I've seen the difference in just the year and change that I've been part of the group.
Right.
And how it has been refined, tweaked, and scaled. So I can't wait to see what the future holds with that. And then another venture, Mr. Serial Entrepreneur, that has just come to the table and I can't wait to get started and I'm already, you know, part of as an affiliate is your storm checks.
Yes.
Where once again, someone came to you this time for the who, not how, because you have the infrastructure with ERC tax credit. Would you like sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I'm more of a consultant with storm checks, but and I'm an equity partner as well, just recently. But so there was two guys that are in our Commercial Academy group that had background in getting claims from insurance companies on commercial properties, you know, with wind damage, hailstorms, all that kind of stuff.
Unforeseen damage.
Yeah. And I tested it out with a few of my properties, and two of them qualified, and one qualified that I sold a year ago, you know, that I can go back 3 years on the statute of limitations and still get a claim. Other ones didn't qualify because one was in Atlanta, Georgia. And what's cool about it though, is even though it didn't qualify, it's in the database now. So if something happens, and I'm in Utah and all of a sudden, you know, in 2 weeks there's a storm, I'll get notified, say, hey, there's a possible claim on this now. Right. I think that's pretty cool. And so it's two parts. One, you know, if people have a commercial property, it's a no-brainer to me to input their information. Two is if someone wants to make some good side money, it's not small side money.
No.
You know,
by any stretch.
With ERC, you know, that's what I was trying to find different opportunities and that's why they brought me on, is just to kind of understand the affiliate model. Because we had 50,000 affiliates, which is business to business salespeople. It was no cost to become an affiliate, just like this. But my top person made anywhere between $25 to $30 million in commissions. You know, we paid out over $300 million in commissions over that 2.5 year span. And so I consider this being something that, you know, people can make significant amounts of money in.
Right. And I've already found, you know, again, who, not how, in certain rooms, I just bring it up. Hey, you know, I've got this opportunity, you know, our own properties are there as well, you know, Andrew and I. So we have skin in the game. And I found it interesting how you put your own to the test first because, right, you're not going to just go out and vouch for anybody. And then furthermore, we discussed it and we're like, should we be doing this? And then Scott was like, no, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
And you're entitled to it because, you know, just to kind of narrow it down, for anybody who owns a property, whether it be residential or commercial, there's going to be damage being done before the leak happens. The leak is the last straw.
For sure.
That breaks the camel's back, so to speak. And that leak, then you file the claim. But these damages are going on in the interim and they're not being addressed. And they could probably result in saving you and the insurance company a lot of money. So this is completely feasible. I'm already part of it. I can't wait to see what the future holds. We actually still have to sit down and talk about that because I've got some big ideas and I want to be one of those top performing affiliates as well, because anything that I do these days, I don't want to do it half-heartedly. So excited to see what's coming of that. You know, your success has not been a straight line and you've been pretty forthcoming about some of the failures. Some of the bankruptcies that you've had to file along the way. How has that impacted you? How has that impacted your approach? And most importantly, because I know you're a big basketball fan, were there times where you stopped taking shots around there, or did that just encourage you to keep pushing harder when you came across those obstacles?
Yeah, I always say that I've always pushed through. I always wake up every morning that the glass is half full. You know, like you said, I filed bankruptcy back in 2003, maybe 2004. Basically, the lesson was learned, meaning that I lost my job at Sears a month after 9/11. So they let a lot of people go, and back then I was making about $50,000 a year, which I thought I was on cloud nine. I had bought my own home, all that kind of stuff, and then we still wanted to live the same, and we weren't budgeting. And so back then I was getting these letters in the mail that says, hey, you can get a credit card and get advance money of $5,000. I did that with like 3 or 4 credit cards, right? And I've never been taught financial or finance, and budgets, I think that's the downside of school these days. They don't teach what you're going to actually do in the real world, right? And then over about 6 months, we couldn't make those payments. And we sat down with an attorney and says, this is probably your best bet. I was like, wow, I'm only, I think I was like 23, 22 at the time. It was right before I got into real estate. And we did that. And I remember just thinking like, man, I'm not even showing up for my wife, because we had kids. We didn't have kids at the time, but we were married. And it was like a crazy way to start your marriage after about 3-4 years is file bankruptcy. It sucked. Everything was wiped out, and I always look at it like, you know what? The only way is up now.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, to her support. She stuck by me, and we stuck with each other, and we just kept on building and building and building. And so sometimes over the last 20 years, 25 years, she hears all my weird stories and weird ideas. And it's funny because that's why I'm writing books about all this stuff now, because I've had so many different opportunities and jobs that now I put time into, but not money. And, I think my ability is better of seeing like a winner,
right?
Than I did before.
Absolutely. Is that to say that you also can spot a loser, or what are some of the things, if you don't mind sharing that, or bad decisions you've made? And is that part of any entrepreneurial journey, particularly when you have multiple things going on?
Yeah, I think it's coming back to what your superpower is. Like I get opportunities all the time that says, hey, take a look at this. And then I kind of look at like, well, what do you need from me on this? Because right now this might be a winner in your eyes, but in my eyes, I'm not going to put a lot of effort into this because it's not exciting to me, And so I always try to find something that's going to be fun, exciting. Coming back to a commercial academy, that was real estate's always been my passion, and to what you were saying too about like Dean, the Zenith Group, all that stuff. The one thing I've kind of noticed too is I like to be around people that are family people as well.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for me. I think that's what attracts me to Scott as far as a commercial academy, a mentor, is the last 12, 13 years, he's taken on 7 kids, and
that guy's amazing.
I think he's 58 today.
Shout out to Christina.
Yeah,
for sure.
And same thing. Christine's an awesome woman, great, almost like a sister, a great friend, And so I always try to see that, and then you kind of look back, you're like, oh, that's the reason why I like this group so much, because they have the same values as I do with my family.
Family's first for sure.
Yeah.
With everybody in the group. I always say that's, despite the financial success, I'm truly content because I've been able to create a family structure that is healthy and happy and not without its problems, because I always jokingly say, but mean it, if you don't want to kill your kids, you're not spending enough time with them. And it's a blessing that I would not trade for the world, because they're my greatest teacher. And patience was never a strong suit of mine until I had children. And then it's just, you're forced to have patience because it's just, there's no way you can parent healthily if you don't have patience. So what do you see for the future? What do you got going on? Let's talk about the Flat Bill Investor podcast as well. I've been staring at that amazing hat. I'm hitting you up for one of those when I get a chance. Tell us a little bit about that and what your mission is with the podcast. So
the mission with the podcast, so I've been approached to do a podcast for about a couple of years. And I just like always kind of sidestepped it because there's just time. I'm like, I don't have time. You know what? And I kind of looked back and I'm like, I don't think, when I hear that excuse, it's just like, well, you got to make the time, and I was sitting there talking to a friend of mine, which is my partner on the podcast, co-host, Zach, been a great friend of mine for a few years. And we were just sitting there talking at Starbucks one morning, and I'm thinking about doing this, and he was thinking about doing a podcast too. And I don't know, I just kind of woke up the next morning and said, you know what, let's make it so there's a brand part of it. You know, we both are wearing a flat bill, and there's a joke to that because about, 5-6 years ago, I remember being in Lids with my boys, and I put on a flat bill, and they're like, oh no, Dad, that you don't pass for that. I'm like, okay. And then so I have longer hair now, but I had this short hair and I had this like hard part right here. And over the course of like 6 or 8 months, the hard part started moving towards the middle every time I got my hair cut. And so I then told my barber, I said, you know what, I'm just going to wear a hat for the next 6-8 weeks so I can get this hard part on this side. And then I started buying flat bill, hats. And so he's bald. I don't think he minds me saying that, but he was wearing always a flat bill too. And so we said, let's make it into like a brand, like I call it Flat Bill Investors. And our purpose is to educate entrepreneurs, ones that are thinking about it, ones that are maybe in sales or something, just to inspire them of thinking outside the box and helping them as much as possible of giving value. One thing we do, what we call our green room talk before we have them on the podcast, is we sit down and we kind of go over about 15 minutes of stuff of, hey, the one thing we want to do is we don't want to sell anything on the podcast. Right. We just want to, understand your superpower so we can impact the audience that's listening on what your superpower is and how that could possibly help them. And it's been great so far. We've had a great time. The hat that I have on now is through my sponsors. So a group named Drip Swag sponsored us, and they've been helping a lot of our guests out with swag, from hats to shirts, sweaters, all that kind of stuff. And this guy Colt thinks outside the box with it, and so he's the one that kind of created this hat with the backwards. It's funny because I looked in the rearview mirror the other day. I'm like, oh, it's
perfect.
Straight,
yeah,
perfect.
That's why I said it's like I don't know what they call those things. There's anagrams. There's a big trend right now with the backwards things.
Yeah,
I
seen it twice yesterday with someone else's hats.
Well, I think I got a big head like you, so I need one of those in your size, my friend. You talked about, inspiring others. So a lot of people that have found any level of success, that could be $100,000 a year if you're in a certain, geography or range, and that $100,000 a year and how you got there could, change somebody's life if you shared. You've obviously been, forthright. You said you used to make $50,000 a year just 20 something years ago, and you've done things that far exceeded that. You're playing with house money right now, and you still keep your humility. What are some of the most valuable things that an aspiring entrepreneur needs to know? You mentioned glass half full, and that brings me to mindset. So many people want the how, the details, and the only thing that I can tell someone is you've got to change your mindset. So if you don't have a glass half full mindset, what are some of the things you can do? Were you someone who always had that mindset, or were you able to make the adjustments and give yourself that mindset?
Yeah, I kind of notice what motivates me the most is I need to be educated every day. So that to me is 30 to 60 minutes of something educational. Could be watching I'm a big promoter on That Built series, The Men That Built America, The Food That Built America. To me, that's education. And it's funny because that's why I instill to my own kids. Because Gunnar, my oldest, about 2-3 years ago, he says, I don't want to go to college. And it pierced me a little bit. I'm a person that has a degree. I understand that ROI on college has gone down in the last 20, 30 years. But I came back to him about 3 or 4 days later, and I said, hey, what education are you going to do after high school? Let's not talk about that college word.
Right.
And it's funny because it took him about a month or two. Then he says, I want to go to Utah Tech. Utah Tech's a college. But because we used the word education, it helped his mindset. So my wife and I are always like thinking like, how can we change our own kids' mindset? Because they're growing up the way we weren't growing up. Meaning like my dad was a blue collar worker. My mom worked at the IRS. Her dad, same thing. And they're blue collar type of people. And so that's how we grew up. But our kids aren't growing up that way. They're growing up a different way, and they're getting impacted by other people in my mastermind groups of other siblings.
Right. We're also not growing up like we grew up.
Yeah, like Faria in our mastermind group now, her daughter came up to me yesterday and she goes, "Hey, where's Gunner?" And I'm like, "Well, he's graduating high school next week, so I didn't bring him on this trip, but he came to Orlando, as you know."
Yeah.
And he was bummed yesterday or 2 days ago, texting me like, "Oh, I wish I was there."
That's awesome.
And then texting me this morning like, "Hey, how's it going, big guy?" And I love that relationship that I have with my kids. I love my parents, but I didn't have that relationship where granted, we didn't have cell phones back then either, where you could just text your dad or your mom now.
Well, they were both busy working a job, which takes something out of most people, whether they're aware of it or not. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is you get to call the shots. Now, in the beginning, it doesn't feel that way.
Right.
But once you get to a certain level of success financially, you then own your time and you can use it to, do the things that you want to do, whether it be, wakeboard surfing, spending time with your kids, taking them on vacation, saying, F it, you know what, I need 3 days break. I'm not going to answer any, and you defer to somebody. So you've bought back your time. And only money can do that. Were you ever at odds with money growing up, or is it something you always wanted?
What do you mean at odds?
Money's the root of all evil, right? We've all heard that before. And so much of my community where I come from tries to make sense of the poverty they're born into by vilifying money, wealth, and the people who have it. You grew up in a blue-collar family. Were there ever challenges in terms of aspiring for more?
Yeah, my dad actually always wanted more, but kind of the who, not how. He didn't have the right people around him. And that's what kind of inspired me to kind of being the entrepreneur, because I saw what he was doing. He had a little success in the oil business, like driving a truck. And then it was kind of shut down when Obama became president out there in the oil fields. And but I saw that, and I saw the hard work. But the hard work was driving a semi truck. And there was times in my early 20s, I'm like, maybe I should go drive a truck. But I also thought, you know what? If I just work hard on something, and getting more educated, something's going to pop, Then I got into sales. I got into mortgages. It just continued to move my way up to where I'm at today.
Now, obviously that takes faith. And this is the last question. How important a role has faith played in your success?
Huge. Huge. Comes back to my wife. I just think about just have her faith in me and my faith in her. When I was FaceTiming her this morning, I was just, thinking about how much I miss her. But I also I got off the phone thinking man, I'm so glad that she has faith in me, that she believes in me. And it's kind of like, you heard that speech by Jim Valvano, do you know Jimmy B?
Of course.
And he says, one of the biggest things my dad did for me is he believed in me. And you ask my kids, at least once or twice a year, I always tell them, I look them right in the eyes. I said, just so you know, I believe in you. Whatever you do, I believe in you. That might not hit them as much as it's hitting me when I'm telling them, but I want them 5, 10, 15 years from now. I was like, oh my gosh, my dad believed in me. No matter what, he believed in me. It actually makes me a little teary-eyed. But that's the faith, and I think there's faith in so many different ways, not just a religion. It's faith in so many different aspects in your life. And it's huge for me, it's faith.
You mentioned, I believe in you. So you've essentially planted seeds that may not bear immediate fruit for them,
right?
But it will come, and they'll never forget those things. I just wanted some last words from you, if you would, to our audience. Some parting words of wisdom from somebody who has worked their way up, seen the failures, seen the successes, and without a doubt is going to create a very bright future for himself, his family, and the people around them. If you could just give us some last words before we let you go. Yeah,
so it kind of goes along with my first book. It's going to be out this next week or two, called Take Your Shot. And that's a combination of being an entrepreneur and also in basketball, in sports. I can go story after story on the times that it would have been easy to quit, to walk away. Like one I'm going to tell you right now. This was when I was a sophomore in high school. I was playing football, and I went to my head coach. He was the head coach of the varsity team, and he was my coach the year before in basketball on the JV team. And so he knew my talent, and I had a good relationship with him. And I was barely playing sophomore. So there's sophomore, JV, and varsity, right? I was barely playing sophomore. And I was like, man, maybe I should just like be done with football and just concentrate on basketball. This is like 6 weeks away from basketball starting. And I had an opportunity to possibly start as a sophomore on the varsity team in basketball. So my thought was like, if I'm barely playing football, like, why am I doing this? But I wanted to sit down with him. I sat down with him, and he goes, hey, I know your talent. The sophomore coach, the JV coaches, they don't know it, but I'm going to go talk to him for you. Give me 2 more weeks. Okay, I'll give you 2 weeks. The very next week, I paid a little bit more sophomore and a little bit JV. The very next week, so now I'm like, okay, I got 1 more week, and I'm barely playing. And the very next week, the Coach Grajek, decided to dress every sophomore for the homecoming game for varsity. So all us sophomores, which none of us were playing varsity at all. He just dressed us. And I remember sitting on the sideline, and we were playing we ended up being the state champions that year. That's who we're playing. Oh. They're undefeated 4-0. I think we were like 3-1 at their Millard High School. Very first play, the guy, Courtney Tuttle, gets an end around, 80 yard, touchdown. We're down 7-0. And we then, offense, we then punt it to them. Then the very next play, 75 yards around the same end, touchdown. There's a flag on the play. It's pulled back. While that flag is getting pulled back and everyone's kind of coming back to the 25-yard line, the Coach Grajek turns around to the defensive coordinator, which is Dave Clark. He goes, Clark, who's on that side? I won't say the guy's name, but this person. He goes, well, get him out of there. And Clark says, well, who are we going to get? And I was just sitting there with my arms, and I'm a middle linebacker and at the time. And he goes, well, get Zieglowsky in there. He goes, Zieglowsky's a middle linebacker. We're replacing a cornerback. I don't care. Get Zieglowsky in there.
Can't do any worse than those last 2 plays.
Yeah. So he throws me in there, and I'm like running in the game. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is varsity game. And I'm like, I tell this one guy, I'm like, you're out. And I say to another friend of mine, and I'm a sophomore. All these are seniors in the huddle. I'm like, where was this person? He goes, he's the cornerback. I'm like, what does he do? He goes, you have a deep third. Don't let anything behind you. Okay, I'll do that. And anyways, 2 plays later, they try to go deep on me. And it's funny because I'm friends with the offensive coordinator for Millard now. So he told me his story. He's like, I knew everyone on the defensive. And all of a sudden, this sophomore comes in. I'm like, let's go deep on this guy. Yeah, I intercept the ball.
Nice.
By halftime, I have 2 interceptions. By the end of the game, I have 4, and I tie the state record for the most interceptions in a game. And I use that story because 2 weeks before I was going to quit. And I stuck with it. And that's the value of coaching. That coach said, give me 2 more weeks. I ended up starting the rest of the year as a sophomore. And it kind of goes along with the faith. He had faith in me. Mm-hmm. There's something he saw that I didn't see. And I think we have that impact on a lot of people.
You're having it on me right now, brother. So thank you. Man, I couldn't end it on a better note. Just want to thank the audience for coming in, tuning in. As always, we hope you got something beautiful out of today. Josh, thank you again for sharing your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being you, and I cannot wait to see what our future holds, brother. Such an honor. Thank you for coming by.
Yep.
Appreciate you. Stay tuned as always. Let's get it.